All right, so if you're interested in being an entrepreneur or you're in the process of starting to launch something, what we'd like to do is we'd like to do some Q&A. So I'll run around the microphone, give you the mic, you can ask your question, and we'll see what these folks have to say to give you a little bit of advice. Also, since this is an entrepreneurship thing, I fully expect we're going to have people that should be exchanging business cards. So if you got business cards, feel free to pass them around to the people that either you can give advice to or you want advice from. All right, last call. All right, so let's start on the end. You guys have a mic. So can you introduce yourself, give a little bit of background, things that, some of the success you've had, maybe some of the advice that is most relevant that you might be able to help people with, and share a little bit of your experience. Okay. No, you stand. You gotta play.
So I need to introduce myself now? Hey, I'm Keith Casey. My big success in life is saying on that conference video over and over and over. No, I've been through a number of different startups, some wildly successful, some wildly failures on both sides of that. My last 4 are a pretty good streak. We've had 2 IPOs, 2 acquisitions, starting to do a little bit of angel investment now, doing something on the side, having fun with that, and starting to kick off a little bit of revenue with it, a couple $100 a month, and trying to scale that to about $2,000 a month by the end of the year. So my number one advice out there is ship. Ship, 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 ship.
My name's Clark Sell. I currently are in possession of 3 companies, with a 4th being born. Well, I've recently killed 1 company. We're sort of figuring it out and learning a lot.
I'm Kendall Miller. I'm the CEO of Gibraltar Software. We're a small independent software vendor that works in the .NET space. We have 2 software products we founded about 10 years ago. And end of each year, we're sort of amazed when turns out we pay everybody and there's still a little money left over. It's just sort of an amazing feeling. My top piece of advice I tell anyone who's starting out or trying things is that 80% of business is just showing up. Show up at meetups, show up at places, show up at things to do. If you're ever stuck, like how am I going to make revenue? How am I going to do something? Just show up somewhere in some community, in some environment, in some space. 80% of business is just putting in the time to show up.
Hi, my name is Rob Reynolds. I am the, founder of Chocolatey. If you haven't heard of Chocolatey, it's a little tool that we brought about 7 years ago for Windows that does software management, package management. We turned that into a company probably starting about 2014 and did a Kickstarter. It was successful. We were pretty excited about that. Built a lovely community in the process. What can I say? So I have 2 companies, so I'm kind of a bit of a serial entrepreneur, not like some of the folks that are up here. My piece of advice would be to be persistent. Not always are you going to find folks that are going to be interested in your ideas. They'll come around. The longer you stick with it, you're going to see people will show up. So,
I'm Corey House. I author courses online, video-based, and also do consulting, typically on front-end development. And my piece of advice is to pay attention to less stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay, hi. I'm Jill Howler, representing the ladies here. 1, yes, thank you. Experiencing a little bit of imposter stuff because I'm not in tech, but I do run a business, and I was encouraged to get up here and talk with you in case I can be helpful. I do consulting and executive coaching, and my piece of advice would be stay in touch. I would say about 95% of my business comes from people that I've worked with before. So keeping relationships open and ongoing. As an extrovert, for me that's easy. I realize that may distance me from some of you, but cultivating relationships, I think, is really a good long-term strategy.
My name is Scott Davis. I am the CEO of Conquer. It's a mobile game. I'll do my piece of advice first. Never start a game company. But I have an MBA in entrepreneurship too, so I have a little bit of formal training around it. And I might be one of the only people up here who has an accidental company, one that we didn't intend to start, but we have started. I'm from Minnesota. There's very few companies in Minnesota that can say they have a customer in every country in the world, maybe a dozen or two. But my company is one of those companies. I've had a gamer play the game in at least every country in the world so far, and I guess I have somebody in Antarctica as well at McMurdo Station playing. So little bit of trivia for me. So if you have a question, please come up to the front here and flag me down, and I'll hand you the microphone. You can ask a question. I'll get it started. Would anyone like to share why you wanted to be an entrepreneur? What triggered that in you, or why it was that this is the right fit for you?
Bad bosses.
I did the corporate thing for almost 20 years, became kind of complacent with who I really was as a kid. I used to, my teens, work in the garage, slinging car audio stuff and tint windows, and made thousands a night. I mean, I would make $5,000 a week like it was nothing. Made good money in corporate America, hated the grind, hated the silliness that went with it, and wanted to really use the skills that I had to help others, and to do that I needed to do it on my own.
I would second that. So I always wanted to do something to help out and to build something bigger than myself. And so, again, sort of an accidental entrepreneur in a way. But yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it.
I'd just say a desire for autonomy, which I think I've been blessed by having almost all really good bosses, but still being your own boss is extra special compared to even a great boss. That feeling of owning your failures too is, strangely enough, a motivator. That whatever happens is from your own work. You can take the pride, and you got to take the punch in the mouth too sometimes, but that's a motivator.
Question?
All right, so I'm a wantrepreneur who's just launched what I assume will be my 4th failed startup. And the advice that you see out there when looking for ideas is, hey, solve your own problems, find something that causes pain in your life, go after that. But if you just don't have, if you're not that creative, if you just don't have problems in your life, what advice would you give somebody who wants that autonomy, but just, you just have struggles coming up with what you want to build?
So I think that's crap. You have problems in life, you have struggles, you have things that annoy the crap out of you all the time. I would say look at those first. I'd also say sort of look one step out. The people you interact with, the people you spend a lot of time with that aren't in your day job. What struggles do they have? What irritates them? Because even if it's not your problem, if it's a problem of somebody that you're close to, that you care about, that you work with, that you know, that your neighbor, whatever, having them close and being able to answer their questions and being able to solve their problems is really powerful. I would say that's number 2, but you have problems in life. We all have problems in life. It's a matter of, is that a market? That's a separate question, but we all have problems.
I guess I'd say it took me 6 years to realize that the thing I was spending all my free time doing was something that I should have just turned into a job in the first place. And I mean, that's everybody here tonight. Now I've spent the last year trying to figure out, is it something that I can actually turn into something that will support the time and investment that it takes to do it. But it's what I spend all my free time doing, so why wouldn't I try to monetize that to support it? It's not really a problem, it was just a passion.
I'm going to make the assumption that you're right, that you don't have any problems in the world. I'm going to suggest that makes you the perfect co-founder. Right? Everybody who's an entrepreneur wants to solve their own problem. They got their pet project. which makes it really hard to find a co-founder who wants to be an entrepreneur but wants to work on your problem. So if that's really true, I would start networking your way around entrepreneurship meetups and things like that, because there are so many entrepreneurs out there that are looking for a good, solid business partner. And it's hard enough to get a match, but when you do get a match, then it's sort of a battle of, do we work on your idea or my idea? And if that's not a problem, that might be the perfect thing.
Yeah, I would probably build along with that. Building a product is straightforward. Having an idea and creating the software or a solution around it is a straightforward problem. Connecting with a market in a way that creates a business that's sustainable is extremely hard. And so what I would talk to people about is say, like, if you're going to go into a market, you have to, if you're going to make a company for a product, you have to have a good answer for why you are the one who will be successful at this and someone else won't be. And it can't be because you're a smart person. There are tons of smart development talent worldwide. That's actually readily available. It has to be some reason why you can connect the market. You have a unique insight into the market. You have access to a market or a way to communicate with that market that someone else doesn't have. That's a hard barrier to get over. Yeah, your unfair advantage. Yeah, exactly that. So I like the idea of the co-founder idea, which is that if you just want to go out and solve a problem, find someone who has a problem worth solving and is in the market that needs that problem solved. And then you can work back, because one of the most chilling things is to realize you've built a great product that does solve a need, but there's simply no way that will ever be financially viable because people won't put enough money behind it, or you can't connect to them, or what have you. And you found just another way to fail a business, which are easy to find. But I like that co-founder approach. I mean, it really comes down to, you have to ask yourself before you embark on this thing, because by the way, that product's going to take over your life if you do it. I mean, we do a logging product, and I can't believe that I'm 10 years in, I'm like an expert in logging. That was not where I thought this was going to go. But it is exactly where it goes. So it has to be something you think you can stay passionate on for a long period of time and want to solve, and that you and the team you're assembling are uniquely positioned to solve the product and bring that solution to market.
I've also found being part of that community, almost any community, you start to realize pretty quickly that there are holes. And you have a unique advantage there as somebody who has relationships with the very people that are feeling the pain. And people are happy to complain about the things that annoy them in their areas of expertise. You just have to get close enough to them. So I think the hard part is if you're looking at the entire world and going, where do I start? There are problems all over the place. Well, I mean, I'm in software, so I haven't found it hard at all to find problems that people need solved. I don't go the product route. I tend to go the route of, hey, what are people trying to learn right now? And they're having a hard time learning it. So knowing where the puck is headed is pretty easy that way, because I'm very close to that information, so I have a natural opportunity there. I think the hard thing is if all of a sudden you decide, well, I want to go into dental software. And you go, well, I don't know any dentists except the one that's drilling on my teeth. Hopefully he's candid with me. Maybe we can make a relationship there, but that's when you're at a disadvantage all of a sudden. I like what you said there. I think it's a hard thing about thinking yourself a serial entrepreneur is this idea that I can look around and pull an idea out of the ether. And I feel like the things that I've done that have worked well because I put in the time over a long haul to set up enough inertia that I could have those unique advantages, because they don't come quickly. It's unlikely that you're able to come in and be the savior for this industry, because there are people in there that know a lot more than you for a lot of months. So you're going to need somebody along for that ride.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Anybody in the crowd has a question?
I'm sort of a happenstance entrepreneur. I found a problem for a community and solved it for them, and we have this awesome software platform. And now we're ready to start looking outwards and selling it to other communities. I'm looking for suggestions and tips to help network myself outwards and really spread what we have.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in that boat right now. So if you think of that conference business, we built a whole lot of stuff that runs this ship. And over the years, we've become really good at that software. And so what you don't see behind the scenes is an architecture that has 13 different microservices and deployments and build servers and clouds and queues and all the other garbage that goes with this. We're on the phone every week trying to talk to people, to network with other business owners, to understand the different verticals and places like hospitality and whatnot where this may fit. We solved our problem first because it was our passion, and now it's showing up to other places to see how it can get there. But I'll say that solving it for us was the easy part. Productizing it such that it goes to somebody else is hard. And so getting our first customer is a long process, at least for us, given what we're kind of doing. And one of those customers is the halls and walls that you're sitting in within the moment. But to move this ship is completely different than, walking into a code camp and saying, here's Goliath, use my thing. But show up.
So I'd say the community that you're solving the problem for now, every single member of that community came from another community. If you can get warm introductions to those other communities, where they came from, what they do, that sort of thing, whether it is previous jobs, whether it's other meetup groups, whether it's other conferences, whatever it is, get warm introductions for them to be able to say, hey, you need to meet so-and-so. They help solve our problem. I remember at my last group, my last company, my last meetup, whatever, we had the same problem. We should talk. That goes a long, long way. And if you can flip 5, 10, 50 of those people to be able to make those introductions for you, that's fantastic. That's why Clark stands up here and says, these are the sponsors. These are the people who helped us do this. If you're interested in sponsoring, come talk to us. Because if somebody in this audience goes, yes, we should sponsor that, now Clark, like you would, have a champion inside that group that has a lot of credibility that right now you may not have. That goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of that, our sponsorships in that scenario have all come through relationships. But they're not cold calls. I mean, we cold call the hell out of folks. They don't go anywhere. I mean, it's maybe 1 out of 50. But for me to get them to come in here and devote their time, whatnot, it comes through relationships and people seeing the experience. I mean, we're trying to sell something that doesn't even explain what it is. What conference you want to go to? That conference. We've been at the Kalahari for 7 years, and the booking staff still asks every patron, like, I want this booking code, that conference, and they literally respond with, I'm sorry, I don't know what conference you're talking about. It's it's all about relationships.
So I'm going to pile on top of what Keith and Clark have said, is that 100% of it is relationships, but I want to encourage you to build that story because it leverages those relationships. What is your story? What is your success? What did you do? And it's not about my product does this and this and this and this. That's not a story. The story is, what did you solve? Where did someone seek success? How did you change somebody's life? When you create that story about what you did, if you make a good enough story, your connections, your relationships, they want to retell that story. That's free marketing. And so think hard about what it is that you're selling, your brand, your experience, and sell that story to the point where other people think it's an awesome story and they want to reshare it, because it gives you much more momentum through your network. If you can build that story that other people will share for you, it'll give you amazing, amazing traction through your network beyond just your first level connections.
I'm going to add to Scott's. That story should be able to be told by anybody, not just the people who you think are your end customers. We have more people who get involved in social media and like to treat people and want to wear the shirt because they want to be part of something that they have absolutely no clue what it is, probably would never buy a ticket, but I'll take their retweet or their share or like that's got 5,000 people to it because their network of folks we'll also finally reach somebody that is somehow connected to us as well.
Absolutely. Your story has to be understood immediately so that it can be retold. Okay, next question. Anybody have a question? I'll fill. Okay, go ahead.
I'm intrigued by the Kickstarter comment. Funding is something that I'm kind of focusing on right now for a company that I'm starting, and I'm wondering, talk to me about Kickstarter. I guess that's basically the question. How did you get your story out to Kickstarter? How did you get excitement behind it? How did you move your data through the network so people wanted to go there and fund you?
Accidental marketing? No, so we did a lot with marketing, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I suck at marketing. We suck at marketing. Being able to have people tell your story about what it is, I could ask everybody in the room what they think chocolate is, I get a different answer, right? So we got to refine that a little bit more, and some of it was sheer luck. So a lot of the reaching out a lot through social media, trying to get retweets, all of that kind of stuff. We did a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of sleep involved. There's still not a lot of sleep involved, I'll be honest. When you run a company, you don't get a lot of sleep. But when it came to the Kickstarter and just trying to get that message out, I sought the advice of other folks on, how should this look? Like, what kind of reward should we put out there? What is the right numbers to put into some of that stuff? And even with all of that, my last minute curveball, my wife was like, "You're not giving out any shirts?" No. And so I held it for a few hours so we could get shirts on there. And she was right. We needed the shirts. That was our best seller for our Kickstarter. And may or may not have been the reason that we got funded. I don't know. But yeah, there was that exclusive shirt that you could get through the Kickstarter, and that was the only place you were ever going to get it. And that was her idea. So kind of just listening to the people around you and some of the advice that they're going to give, and then knowing, and like Corey says, knowing where to filter some of that, because you're going to get differing advice in some areas, and then just trying to figure out if you have a big enough community to kind of do that. Now, I actually have a diagram of how the Kickstarter funded. We call it the diagram of what's the word I'm looking for here?
Destiny.
No, not destiny.
It doesn't.
No.
No.
No, it's a diagram of being worried about something not funding, because it was like the last 2 days was a straight up, right? So it was kind of scary, that whole process, and we're just like, are we doing it right? Are we marketing? And it was just a push straight through, like the whole time, thinking that we weren't going to make it, and even at the very end, still not sure. And then suddenly we started seeing a lot of some of the work we were doing with podcasts and all that stuff just really started to pay off. But it was a big push, like all the way through. And I mean, sheer luck for me, we have a huge community already that we could kind of reach out to. We could actually push the message through the product itself that they were already using that was open source. So yeah, it's like the underpants gnomes, where it has the number 1, collect underpants, number 2, question mark, number 3, profit. That was how our Kickstarter got funded.
Anybody else do a Kickstarter? Anybody else try a Kickstarter and fail? Oh, all right. So I tried a Kickstarter and failed. My business, we tried to do a Kickstarter for 50 grand. We ended up getting 25, which means you get 0. But a really interesting thing happened, and it's really risky too, because if you're trying to get an investor and you do a Kickstarter and it fails, what is the investor going to think about that? And so we ended up doing a Kickstarter and it failed, and it turned out to be a really good thing for us, because we did a Kickstarter for 4 weeks, and at the end of those 4 weeks, I had 3 or maybe 4 times more users than I had at the beginning of the 4 weeks. And so I tripled or quadrupled my user base because of the Kickstarter. And those people spent more money in the long run than what I would have earned in the Kickstarter. And I didn't even have to build what I said I would build, because I didn't pass my Kickstarter. So Kickstarter actually can be a very good marketing vehicle, but you have to be very careful about it too, because with that positive can come a very negative thing that you have to be prepared to manage. Rob's 100% right. It's like running a presidential campaign. You will do nothing but campaign for your Kickstarter for a long time. Be careful about your awards because you don't want to spend all your money on awards and have nothing left over to build what you're building, which is a mistake a lot of Kickstarter people make. You have to, nowadays especially, you have to have an amazing video. Pay to get your video done. If you can't beg, borrow, and steal it from a friend or a student or something, you have to have an amazing video now if you want to do a Kickstarter campaign.
Font Awesome did a really good job with theirs. Did you see Font Awesome's?
Which one?
The Font Awesome one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it's amazing. Somebody saw that out there. Yeah, that was a great video.
So the video really is going to make a huge, huge difference today. Maybe not as much when, I mean, we didn't get ours funded and where video was not great. But especially today, you have to look super professional right out of the gate. And that's a good place to put your time. But do your research. End on the last Friday of the month because it's payday. I mean, there's all these things about Kickstarter. Do the research, just don't throw it out there. Get ready to campaign, do the research. There's lots of guides on how to get it done.
And you can leave it in draft for a while and get people to look at it, review it, kind of get their idea. Like I had Scott Hanselman actually look at mine and he said, that's a wall of text. Nobody's going to read all that. Right? You got to break that thing up, make it better, kind of get that message down. So that was it was a hard feedback, but it paid off in the end. So there's that too.
Anybody else? While we're waiting for the next person to come up, I have a question about stealth mode. Stealth mode, right? All entrepreneurs, I'm in stealth mode. I can't talk about my idea right now. I want to hear your feedback on stealth mode. Keith is excited about stealth mode.
Stealth mode pisses me off. I was talking to somebody that I'm not going to point out in the audience. If you are not spending time building your product or building your market, stop. And just because you're in stealth mode, you're not talking to your idea. You're not getting information out there. You're not building an audience. You're not doing anything except annoying the crap out of people. Stealth mode is stupid. Don't do it. Is that clear enough? Don't do it. If your idea can really be copied from like one pitch, it's a bad idea. I could probably say more, but I won't.
So I totally agree with that. Put a little more, put it a different way. Ideas are worthless and implementation is priceless. So just execute. And the fact of the matter is that one thing to keep in mind is that if there are no competitors, you probably are in a non-market. So if your words is going to steal your idea and be your competitor, well then just execute better than them. Or if you can't tolerate any competitor, you're in a non-market and you're going to fail anyway. You'll just probably be very expensive and time consuming in doing it. So just execute.
See, we have a sort of stealth mode with Chocolatey. We market so badly that people don't really know what we have.
That's a common thing.
I don't have anything to add to that. That's perfect.
Stupid, don't do it.
So I've got a business that's based in, it's product-based, physical products, and my biggest barrier to rapid growth is capital. So I'm wondering if you guys have any advice on like finding an investor versus finding a loan, or just neither and slow and steady growth.
Product? Experience with friends who have product?
I assume this isn't software product, but physical product? I'm out. I buy bacon.
So this is one of the places where I've seen Kickstarter work if you already have production figured out. Don't do a Kickstarter to go figure out production. It'll always take longer. It'll always be more expensive than what you think. If you've got it figured out, you've got potential lines of credit lined up, you've got manufacturers lined up, okay, fantastic. Then you can do a quick Kickstarter to get things rolling, to get like that first initial 10,000 units or whatever you need. That could work. I've advised a lot of companies who have a physical product, and then they're like, oh, well, we're going to raise money via Kickstarter, via investors or whatever, everything, to figure it all out. That is a nightmare scenario because it's just so expensive, it's so time consuming that they end up burning through every dime they've raised, and now they're ready to start manufacturing. And then they have no credibility because they're like, hey, look, we finally figured out how to make the thing that we said we could make 2 years ago. Give us money and we'll make it. Yeah.
I guess I'm not really in the I guess I have a little bit of physical product. We've gotten into the apparel business in the last year. The one thing that I've realized across all the years, the 8 years that I've been building and failing and building businesses, is you need to ask a lot of questions. And in the case of like the apparel stuff and our printers and distribution and all that, we have learned a lot from them, and they've taught us a lot and helped us kind of grow in that side of things. But if I would have never asked a question and listened, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. And as scale has gone, we've been able to leverage that for good. So we spend $30,000 a year on t-shirts. We like branch that out and help others and kind of make raise our scale so that we get some better prices. And that's just one of the ways we kind of pass it back on. But our printers have helped us kind of get into that mode, and we would have never even thought about it.
So there is an alternative to Kickstarter. I should have mentioned it earlier. Indiegogo, you've probably heard of it. You don't actually have to meet that number. Now, with actual physical stuff, you probably do want it, so you'll want that Kickstarter. But in the case of software and stuff like that, maybe a lower number would be okay. I think with Indiegogo, even if you don't meet your goals, you still get all the money. So there is that opportunity as well.
I haven't done a physical product, but I've talked to lots of entrepreneurs who have. My first question would be, do you have the patent process started? You want to think about what it is your investors are going to be scared about, and a patent helps put them at ease, or at least a patent application can help put them at ease. And that's a little bit easier with a physical product than in some other products that are out there. So that would be one of my questions, is saying, what are the investors going to be worried about? Patents can help with that, or at least a patent in progress. The next thing I would suggest is, do you have to have full-scale manufacturing to prove the value of the product? If you can make these in your garage and get 50 of them or 100 of them out there and get some amazing testimonials, that also helps that investor realize, okay, the product's kind of understood. We can kind of see the value. We don't have to go through R&D and fund that to realize it's not going to work. So I think you probably are going to have an investor. You're going to probably need one. I don't know what your product is, but you'll probably need it. So then I think you really need to start approaching from the point of view of, what can I do to make investors more comfortable with this investment? And there are things you can do to help that process.
If the other question was in capital and raising enough capital to kind of get started where you can actually do just that, and that's not going to come from you, you may need to seek out a co-founder. I think there was one over here.
True, or a partner. There might be somebody in the space who you can already leverage some of what they're doing, sign some type of an agreement with them. That's a little bit dangerous, because if you don't have the patent yet, there is some risk. I mean, stealth mode aside, walking into a business that could turn around and start making your product the next day because they can execute better than you can is a risk. But there are ways to make that happen in a partnership if you can't get off the ground on your own.
When you're really small, when you're looking to take on investment, you need that investment to be more than just dollars, because that person's going to expect a lot from you, because nobody gives money easily. If they do, they lose it all. So you want to seek out somebody who is bringing to you much more than just their money, their ability to execute in your domain, and some reason that if you're making a product that appeals to what I think dentistry came up earlier, to dentists, find someone who has investment money, understands manufacturing, and is in the American Dental Association. Bingo, that's your investor. They'll have credibility, they'll have market experience, and they'll understand the value of your product a lot better than someone else who will come in from scratch.
When I advise the companies that I'm working with on taking investment, I say every investor needs to fall in one of three categories, at least one, preferably two. They need to either be a subject matter expert. They need to know the industry cold. So dentist and dental association, fantastic. They need to understand your go-to-market. So I'm working with one that they build kiosks. They got an investor from Redbox. Okay, the founders of Redbox. They know the go-to-market. Or the third one is they need to understand the stage of the company that you're at right now and what it takes to get to the next stage. If they come from one of those three things, that's good. If they have two of those, that's great. Sign them right now. But the flip side is, from the investor point of view, you need to understand that investors they're not risk adverse. They're risk tolerant. There's a little bit of a difference there. If they're risk adverse, they wouldn't be investors. If they're risk tolerant, they understand here are the risks I'm stepping into. Now, the more risks you introduce, the worse your deal is going to be. If you can eliminate or at least mitigate some of those risks early on, the better your deal is going to be, and the more likely you are to be able to get the dollars to get you there. Does that make sense?
And honestly, if you can stay away from VC, please do.
Oh yeah, don't take money if you don't have to. Absolutely. I was telling Rob earlier, like the second you take a penny, you've started a time bomb in your organization, and it is ticking no matter what you do. And is ticking, and you might be okay with that. That's fine. Do not take money unless you have a purpose and a timeline on when you're going to use it, because no one will ever give you money so you can have it sitting in your bank account. Ever. Because we could do that ourselves. So make sure you have a purpose and a plan in place, and realize time bomb's ticking at that point.
So let's continue this talk about investment. Did you take money? Anybody wants to share their story? Did you take money? Did you attempt to take money and fail? Did you not take money, and why not? What are some of the things that that you personally struggle with either investing or not having an investor, and how did that change the way that you built your business?
I didn't take any money. I'm a service-based, so I just had very specific goals around meeting certain revenue goals that I needed to meet, and just matching and exceeding that, as I went on. So service-based may be a little bit different.
Do you have a line of credit?
I never took a line of credit. Yeah, I didn't even use a credit card. I just went out and started working and got paid. I mean, it's consulting.
So we were building a software product business, and we took, basically my partner and I each put in a considerable amount of money, and then we each basically found a relative partner that would be willing to basically give us money with no strings and no advisory or no anything, the friends and family, funding arrangement for basically Class B stock in the company, and got another chunk that way. And then we tried to balance our time to doing a little bit of service work to pay some extra bills to extend our runway while we built out the product work. And because our business now, we are about 65% product revenue, 35% service revenue each year. We do have highs and low months because and for us in our business, product revenue is very, very cyclical. So we do have a line of credit with an actual bank. Now that sounds nicer than it is. It really means backed by my personal credit, because banks aren't stupid. But it tolerates the fact that we have like large enterprise customers, and sometimes they feel puckish and will pay in 90 days, no matter what you put on the invoice, and do things like that. So that's what our line of credit is for.
Turn off the product.
Well, and in our case, almost our enterprises buy stuff that we run on. I do not think I'd want to take on that legal liability. They will pay, they really will pay, but they pay on the schedules that they pay.
So a piece of advice from another entrepreneur who's not here tonight. He was here last year. He said, if they don't pay on time, he doesn't care how big they are, they shut them off. And if they balk all they want, they just don't get turned back on. It's like, well, there's the invoice. You had what time the software ended, so you can. Now, you have to be comfortable with that, and he's comfortable with that. So, there's that aspect.
Yeah, I think on our SaaS platform, if someone was costing us real money, we would do that. In our interesting case, like almost all the long payers, in fact, 100% of the long payers are on-site licensed customers, and so there's some interesting challenges there to me, even legal ones, for me remotely disabling their software. I will say though, what we have totally done that's worked. You talk about like payment terms is the thing you run into as an entrepreneur, right? So we put on every invoice net 30, and X% if you don't give us money, and blah blah blah. It is cute, isn't it? It's adorable, right? Oh, because you got to put something there. There's a little box in the field, and you need to fill it in, So we do that. What we have discovered, though, because in essence, the person at the end who's buying your product has no ability to control their own AP department in a large company. They can't. But what they will do is they know that. So, for example, we routinely get things like hey, look, if you can't pay in net 30, we're going to have to assess a increment on the price. And so we've gotten like 5 and 10% increases in price to accept net 90 terms. and they will apologize to you the whole time they're paying you an extra 10% for your product. And that works much better. Or we pre-bill. We have one customer that pays us literally a year in advance because they are almost a 6-month cycle to pay, and they're a large customer. So we get a giant windfall check that pays basically our corporate taxes at the end of every year, that prepays these guys because their own AP department can't work it out. Therefore, the business that wanted our service was perfectly willing to come up with another way.
Everything's negotiable.
Right? Yeah.
I talked
Everything's
to a consultant.
negotiable.
I talked to a consultant earlier today about terms, and I said, look, you offer them the rate you want as the discount rate, and then there's another rate that's $5 an hour, $10 an hour on a 30-day payable, and then at $20 an hour on a 60-day payable. And when your invoice is 30 days or 60 days, whatever it's late, that's the price for the next billing cycle. It's in the contract. That's the next invoice. That companies who run short of money, they figure out who they're going to pay first. That will move you to the top of the list if you're a service provider.
Yeah, I was going to say everything's negotiable. Ask. The worst thing they can do is say no, and then you're back to the terms that you wanted anyway. That's a good position to be in. The other thing that's radically changed a lot of purchasing is SaaS, just fundamentally, because I'm like, in my position, I can't authorize a $5,000 purchase order, but I can authorize $500 a month for as many months as I want. Yeah, do the math on that one. So when you're talking to customers, especially corporate customers, understanding where their price thresholds are is fantastic. I was working with a major bank on the East Coast a few years ago, and I was working with a senior director, and we're putting together a proposal. This is when I was doing consulting, and I said, so how much is your budgetary authority? And he goes, well, I can't tell you it's $125,000 a year. I said, okay, great. So I came in at that minus about 5%. Because if I went up to the number, that would be a little obvious. But you can trim off a little bit and go, oh, okay, cool. Now I don't have to go to your boss for approval. Now you can sign off, and we can do this in a matter of days or weeks instead of months. The faster you can figure out those little nuances and how to play that game, the better off you'll be.
I'm going to step back to the taking funding or
What, the actual question?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bootstrapping. So outside of the Kickstarter, we're fully bootstrapped. We didn't do any kind of, so that was that collaborative funding. We didn't take VC money. The biggest reason there was just not serving two bosses, right? So our bosses are our customers. They're the ones defining things that they want our products to do at the end of the day, and that's how we want it, right? We wanted to grow a business that's going to be around for a while, that doesn't have, like Keith said, you take that money, you're a time bomb, right? You have basically three things at the end of that. You go out of business, you have an exit strategy of some sort where you sell out, get acquired. That's how what most VCs want, right? Or you move up the next series, because that's where they want to see that valuation, all that stuff. And so then you're working towards pieces of the product that give really good marketization or whatever, so that you can get more customers, not necessarily working on the right things, right? And so we wanted to work on the right things, and we wanted to be our own bosses at the end of the day, or I wanted to be my own boss. So I wanted to make sure that I had full control of my business so I could take it the direction I wanted it to go, where when you do VC funding, you may lose control of your business, and you have to be okay with that, right? And I said, I'm never going to own less than 51%, right? As long as I'm at the helm, because then I can decide which direction we go and at what speed we do that.
We attempted to raise money and failed. And we spent a lot of time getting ready to raise money. We knew there were certain things that we needed to have for an investor to be interested in. And the feedback we got were, you've never done gaming before, no one's ever going to make a successful location-based game. So that was 4 years before Pokemon Go. You live in the wrong part of the country, and you're way too damn old. And so we heard these types of things, and actually the last investor I think I talked to told me, Scott, you don't need to raise money. And I looked at him like, no, we do. I've got two business partners that can't pay their mortgage unless I raise money. And he said, you don't need to raise money. And I left that meeting really frustrated and disappointed, and I didn't really know what to do. And within 2 or 3 weeks later, my other two business partners said, we got to go get jobs. And so I left and went and got jobs. And they said, Scott, I think we should give up. And I said, well, I got 5 more months of runway. I'm going to stop trying to raise money now that you guys are going to go get jobs. And I'm going to write code. And within 4 months, we were cash flow positive to the point where I could take a paycheck. And guess what? That last investor I talked to was right. We didn't need to raise money. Now, to Rob's point, had we raised money, I guarantee you my business would not exist today. My shareholders, my investor, would not have tolerated a massive 2-year rewrite. They would not have tolerated the income levels that we've had. They would have said, you're on my books, you're sucking down my profile, I want this shut down. I guarantee that would have happened with our company. So you have to understand those risks when you take on an investor. The time bomb is real, not just because you might run out of money, but even if you can just barely eke by, investors hate those companies in their books. They don't want that in their profile. They would rather see you fail and get them off their books.
Yeah, one of the companies we spun out of that I was working for at the time had investment funding, VC funding, and they had a 10-year payback. And it didn't matter what happened, in 10 years those investors were going to get paid. And so this very large software company that I'll leave nameless spent the last 2 years of that 10-year cycle, so year 8, trying to make themselves something so that they could sell off to get their investment funding or get their investors paid to turn the company over to somebody else. I don't know, I don't want to spend 10 years building a baby and then like being forced to, I don't know, do a thing to turn it over. But it's what happens.
The only other thing that I would say is when you kind of bootstrap, you work a lot more because it's not like when you take in the money now, you can actually hire a whole bunch more people. You have to think about making sure that you don't use up all of the resources and the money that you're getting that's coming in. And so you kind of go through that what's the right word? Growing pains and panic attacks. Anxiety, that was the word I was looking for earlier, you know, the wall of anxiety. That anxiety is real. Use it, foster it, and then just kind of do a lot of work.
Question? Anybody got another question? Question, anyone?
While we're on the topic of money, what were some of the strategies you guys used to help price your services and get the most for your bang?
Guess and check. Pricing is probably fundamentally one of the hardest questions you will ever have to deal with. It's harder than any technical problem you have. It's harder than just about anything because getting it wrong could be frustrating. Getting it wrong could be catastrophic, or getting it wrong could be totally okay. And you don't know. And you don't know until you're much, much later into the process, and then you're like, oh crap, we can't pay our bills. Oh, man. I'm hearing oh man from Clark. I'm gonna pass it.
So I've run product for a lot of large software companies and some small ones, and motive, margin, billing, and process are like these things that always would come to our mind. So when we'd be at big companies, the pricing structure would be somehow based on emotion and not necessarily like about holistic reality of what it would cost to do something. You could sell a product at $79 or $69 and could sell the hell out of it, but you may actually be losing money, but because it's wrapped up into a bigger umbrella, you know, it's kind of hided by the systems that are there and the line items and budget numbers and whatever. So you don't have a true sense of how valuable or how liked your thing is because it may have been underpriced. On the same side, we ran a PaaS business and had 45,000 websites in that PaaS business. Really low cut, you know, $9.99 a month, utility-based billing and all that. But our billing system would suck up more time and problems to try to go get money from the people that had used the service than where the cost was at. So just because you may or may not have something priced right, you need to understand like how you're going to bill them, how you're going to know your margin. What if somebody gives you a delinquent credit card? You can say that Stripe does this stuff, but then the customer has the ability to dispute the charge, and you as the person who made the charge are like powerless, and yet you've already spent all the money. And so you have to be really, really clear and understand where the holistic thing fits into that, and then be all right with, I need to make this at every tier because this is how the product survives. And for the most part, when you go pay for that service, you want to make sure that it's there. You as the customer, like this day of giving away free stuff and expecting to run the business on it is ludicrous. The customers who really will want to pay for it are the customers you want, and they also want you to survive. They're price sensitive to the value that they get, but you need to know that value that's in there.
Following the value thing, that's where I was going to step in, was if you know the value that you provide, and if your product is sustainable enough to be at a price per unit or whatever it is to stay under that, where you get a nice margin, that makes it a sustainable product. But know the value, have some percent of that you're willing to say, oh, I need to stay within 30% of the value of the product. And our cost per whatever that piece of product is over whatever schedule is at like maybe 10% of that. So if you can get it down at that number, then you're doing pretty good.
So I'll say two bad ways of doing pricing is copying your competitors. Don't, because they're guessing just like you are. So you're just guessing off a guess. Don't do that. And then also trying to figure out how much of your time is involved. No one cares about your time. Odds are your time is undervalued. You're undervaluing yourself anyway, or you're wildly misestimating what time it would actually take to do it yourself. Don't use that. What Rob said is understanding the value. I'd flip it around and understanding the pain. If you understand the pain that the customer is going through and the consequences of not using your product, that's valuable. So one of the discovery questions I always sit down when I'm asking customers, I go, okay, I don't ask them what would you pay or what would you do with this. I say, have you had this problem? The last time you had this problem, what were the consequences? Was it time, money, effort? Was it staff? Did people lose their jobs over this? Did you have to replace people? Did you have downtime? What were the consequences to your organization? Because if you can put them in cold, hard numbers like that, where they say, yeah, we lost $50,000 the last time this happened, you now have a number. If you can prevent that from happening once a year, $50,000 is your ceiling now. So go within 10% of that. Say, hey, look, we're going to charge you $45,000, and they're still getting a deal. So understand what the pain is.
Because they're going to negotiate you too.
Because they're going to negotiate you too, absolutely. If you understand what their pain is, not just the value, the pain, that's powerful. That's something to go on. Time and materials is crap. Don't use it.
No, fix it. Always do fix it.
So another way to look at this with products is, let's assume you're in a market that has competitors. One of the things to keep in your mind is that price is a common surrogate for quality. Most people do not have time to become well-informed consumers, so they make the quiet assumption that more expensive stuff is inherently better than cheaper stuff. We all do this, right? You go on Amazon.com, you're looking for a USB cable, and you see the one for $1, and you see the one for $8. You're thinking, that dollar cable's got to suck. You have not done any lab testing. You've not gotten both. We probably haven't even looked at the recommendations, but you're pretty sure it's got to be a crappy cable. So if you have competitors out there, and therefore if the market has a price it's expecting to pay, if you deviate significantly from that, you're going to have some explaining to do. Your explaining might be great. Like, no. We are the cheap value provider of X. Cool, that's a market to be in. But it's a risky market. Being the cheapest provider of X makes you easy to undercut by someone who's 5 cents cheaper than you, and your customers will be the ones that only give a rip about that.
Yeah, true story on that. When I was early in my days at Microsoft, and it was the SQL Server versus Oracle competition, SQL Server was never seen as a competitor whatsoever because it was at least $75,000 cheaper. Yeah. It was a $25,000 database. It was crap. you didn't have a real database unless you were spending 100, 125, 150 from IBM or Oracle or somebody else.
So some
And they
genius came up
lost.
with Enterprise Edition, right?
So they lost their shorts on it simply because of that.
No joke. We literally have a SKU not on our website that we offer to companies that costs 3 times as much as our other SKUs and differs only in practice in terms of you get my personal cell phone number and access to our source code. But it's gotten us into some deals. Because otherwise, we've had people tell us, like, I'm sorry, there's no way I can spend more than 100 grand on your product and I'm competing you against this other player at $500,000 a year. I can't pitch you. You've got to give me a way to give you more. And so we usually create things like, custom support packages, which is a great way in a product business to find ways to make money.
Everything's negotiable.
Everything's negotiable. But remember that the price is a surrogate for quality, so do not fall to the siren seduction of being cheaper than a competitor you believe you're superior to, particularly because you're going to start out in a market, you're going to be a niche player. By definition, you started out in the market. Well, people that value your niche will pay more because you fit them better. So if you look and you're like, oh, I see my competitors out there and they're $120, you should be thinking, good, I'm starting at 150 because if I'm better, I'm the niche player. And that's where I want to start. And make your product worth the money. Don't lower the price to what you think you're worth. Make your product worth to them, by the pain it solves, that kind of money.
And no matter what, somebody's going to say your price is not expensive enough or it's too expensive. So it doesn't matter where you price it. So just keep that in mind.
So I have an entirely different approach to this question because my business is B2C. You guys are all B2B mostly, right? So in the B2C world, if you're selling directly to customers, if you're doing a mobile app or a web app, you must have something that's free. Consumers are no longer willing to pay for something on mobile or on the web unless you can prove to them it's worth it. And if they don't know who you are because you're a startup, the only way you're going to do that is to give them something for free. Give them something that they absolutely love and they want to cross that velvet rope by spending $5, by spending $10, whatever it is, whatever you've got. In today's market, and if you have an Android phone, if you have friends who have an Android phone, this is the stereotypical Android user. I will do whatever it takes not to spend 99 cents. Right? And so it's a hard market. The consumer market, when you're offering small scale services directly to consumers, it's super, super, super hard to break that seal. How do I get them over that line? Once they've spent even the 99 cents, even just that $1, then they'll start to spend more. But you gotta give them something for free because today, you don't buy stuff unless you know that the value's there. And the only way you can do that is starting up for free. Now there's a little trick that I use in my business as a gaming company is that I make all of my money on 10% of my users. That sounds pretty stupid, right? I mean, most business would say, what are you talking about? But that's Zynga makes all their money on 1% of their users. Think about that. But here's something interesting. Can you take your free customers and make them into product? Like in my business, it's a game business, and I already told you don't start a game company. But think about this. All of my free users are out there running around the world for my people that are spending big bucks to destroy. Right? They're actually game content for the people who are spending money to play the game and dominate. Now, that's a game, but if you think about it, even in any type of a product world, are there ways that you can leverage your free consumers so that it makes your spending customers feel better, do more, have something else? How do you leverage them as part of a product? Like, for example, we all know this, right? If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Think about how you make your free customers the product and go along with the people who are actually buying the product to help them. Okay, next question I have for the group is let's talk about family. Right? This is the whole work. I hate work-life balance. I really was going to not say that word, but how does the family play into what you do? Is the family the key to your success? Is it the thing that you worry about more than your business? Tell us about that entrepreneurial journey when it involves the other people in your life that you care the most about.
I've already talked about mine.
All right. There's two things, or three things, I guess, for us. My wife and I are our business partners. We work in a 300 square foot office, back to back. These guys over here will attest to it. Business is 24/7, right? It's at dinner, the kids know about it. We're pretty transparent with our kids about the business. I want them to understand kind of how the world we live in, because we're not a typical family. We have an office at home. Mommy and daddy are at home. We make weird things. We have lots of TVs. I own 50 phones for sponsors. Like, my son is like, yes, I'm going to get a phone. And I'm like, no, put him in a box. I wrote a Medium article that you can go read, where I'm pretty transparent about some of the struggles that we've had. It's called One Time Only or One Time Anytime. And it's about making a decision as to what's more important at a given time. So in the case of my kids, if my son or daughter has a thing, I'll ask myself, is it something that I can do one time anytime or one time only? And that's a pretty big driving factor as to I need to either be present and accounted for that thing. They also have a card, if you will, where they're allowed to tell me that I need to shut the laptop off or come upstairs because they need time. And they need to feel empowered enough to express that for us and knock me back out of reality to say, hey, it's time to be part of the family. And thus we try to work out a way and a schedule to where I may work super early in the morning, get a couple hours in, get the kids ready to school and be present for those 2 hours, work again, do a thing, work again, do a thing, work again, do a thing. So my day is not a stereotypical day of what you would see from back in the day. It's basically work 7 days a week and interweave pockets of when it works good for the family, because I do not discern Monday to a Saturday to a Sunday. There's 7 days in a week. I try to fulfill them the best that it works for our business and our family.
I'd be the first to say I'm probably not the best at it. We try to have carved out hours of time, and it doesn't always work because I get, hey, Daddy, put your phone down. Stop looking at your phone. Of course, I always am like, well, I got to answer this question. It's pretty important. So I have to remember to shut off the Apple Watch or put it into silent so that I don't look at it. So I'm probably not the best at the work-life balance because like Clark, 24/7. Every business owner, we're always that's always on our mind, all the time. But there are some periods of time, like my third day into vacation when we went to Disney World, I was actually not really looking at my email by then, and by the time I realized I was having a blast, it was almost time for the vacation to end. So I will say I'm only a few years into that ownership, so hopefully I'll start paying attention. I actually like that idea of the card. We have to look at that. So
I would maybe add, in my line of work, I work with a lot of business owners and executives in defining that balance, right? So what's balance for you might not look like balance for me. So getting clear on what do we mean by balance, maybe even renaming it like integration. What is work-life integration? Because work is 7 days a week and 24 hours a day, and how do I integrate both my work world and my personal life? I know one executive that I worked with, she traveled the globe, was constantly gone, and had literally installed a red flag in her home that anyone at any time could pull. And when the flag went up, there was a family meeting because there's a red flag, and we had to talk about what's been going on with travel. She had the ability to control that to a degree. So whatever that might look like for you, whatever the red flag might be, if it's gone too much on the phone too much, if there are ways to bring more balance in, I think getting the whole family involved can really work.
Yeah, work-life balance is a hard topic, but I have found that I don't care what other people think about my balance. I'm not worried about what other people think in all sorts of areas, but in particular, I'm weird to the point of I will go to my son's baseball game and I have my Mac on my lap. When his team's in the dugout and my son's waiting to bat, I am on my machine and I am billing. And I'm the only parent that does that. And my wife is uncomfortable with that and has finally gotten over it. But I share that little anecdote because that's the kind of hustle that it takes if you're going to find the time to also have a balance with your family. I recognize at those times, my son's waiting to play. And those other parents, I don't have a great relationship with them. And I literally, this is the funny thing, my daughter, we went to the baseball tournament a few weeks ago. She goes, "Daddy, you're antisocial. Mom said so. You didn't talk to any of the other parents." I'm going, "Macy, come with me to a software conference and then tell me if I'm antisocial or not. I have my people, but here, I'm working. I'm not here to socialize. Those other parents are huge into baseball, and that's awesome, but I don't have the bandwidth to be big into baseball. I'm big into this. I'm big into my son's experience in this." And some people look at me and go, "Well, you're not engaged enough in that. You should be coaching them." And I'm going, I can't do that and do these other things. Everybody's got to make hard decisions. But this is about hustle. My wife, when we're on trips, my wife drives. Our drive up here, she drove for about 5 hours of that drive. I was billing that whole time. And I was also writing my dang talk, so I was ready this morning. Again, you've got to find time where you can find time. And there's going to be people that are going to judge you for that, but you've got to be very comfortable with the trade-offs you're making.
We were actually talking about this earlier. You need to evaluate how you spend your time in the day and what you waste your time on. For example, my wife and I have to divide and conquer usually to get the kids off to soccer practice because one's in one town and one's in the other town. Well, it's 25 minutes for me to get to one direction. I will drive that 25 minutes. I will sit outside in my truck and work or whatever, something that needs to be done in that day that's productive, rather than driving back home and then go back again and go back home, because I would have wasted 50 minutes of time doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and I work at home, but that 50 minutes is damn important. And so you have to look at your day and figure out if the thing that you're doing is pushing the ball forward or if it's not. And if it is not, stop. If it is email, turn it off. Like, invest in the things that move it forward. You will find that your life will get sucked out of you on things that don't matter. Do you need to write a 4-paragraph response? Or can you simply say, yes, done? Can you get to inbox 0? If the answer is no, then you cannot make a damn decision about those tasks that are in there. You should be able to delete it, clear it out, move on. You have to be able to make quick decisions about your time and what its value is.
I'd say one thing on this is that whatever your priorities are, whatever your boundaries are, make them and enforce them. Because if you don't enforce your own boundaries, no one else will. I work for my current employer is San Francisco based. I start work at 9 a.m. Central Time because I'm based in Austin, Texas. At 6 p.m. sharp, I stop. If you message me at 5:59, tough for you. I'm out. Then that's 4 p.m. at headquarters, and that's fine. I told my team, hey, look, I'm not available after that. In the over 2 years I've been there have been exactly 3 calls that have happened after 6 p.m. my time. 2 of them have been with our Australian teams. So I'm kind of giving those guys a little bit of credit there. But if you don't enforce your boundaries, and no one else will. So whatever your priorities are, that's cool. Enforce them, make them clear to your team, because you know what? Everyone else on your team also has boundaries. Your co-founder has boundaries. Your spouse has boundaries. As long as you're open and honest about it, you'll find that people are a lot more willing to either respect them or B, negotiate them. But nobody can work it out if your expectations aren't clear.
Yeah, and I'd be transparent and honest. I mean, I think I've been in situations where a customer's called and a thing is down, and I've said, listen, I'm at my kid's thing right now. I can't do it. And I'll take care of it the minute I get to a computer, but right now it's not the time. And for the most part, that's fine.
That's actually a pretty good just generally being that transparent, sharing a little bit of your life tends to create empathy on the other side. It makes you more human. So I do that deliberately early in any kind of first sales interaction of saying, I'm at my son's baseball tournament right now. And they're, oh, okay, this is a normal human being. He has commitments too. So, yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, looping back to the balances, for me, it was, there's a bit of interesting negotiation between my wife and I. And one element was that she keeps our home finances. And I discovered that, particularly early on in the company, when our corporate finances were sketchy, because we're a startup, and we weren't taking any money out of the company, so our home finances were super sketchy. My wife couldn't really deal with 2 dimensions of sketchy, right? That simultaneously, I had no idea where money was coming from for 60 days from now, and furthermore, we were good for the next 2 weeks at home, but not beyond that. So it took some negotiation, realizing that sometimes I needed to have a concern I didn't share with her because there was nothing she could do about it. And it was going to add a burden to her. So I had found other people that I could share that concern with. You don't want to just sit on it. But I found other people that I could openly call and just be like, yeah, I'm really nervous about this and that. And then actually, from a startup network, inevitably those people will start telling me, it's like, yeah, but look at these other things you're seeing. These are good positive indicators. Like this will come to pass. And so one of the other things though is I ended up getting a little spot at a co-working space because I found that I wanted to make sure that, unlike my father, if I was home, I was available. And that was a thing for me growing up, was my dad was not. And so for me was, if I'm in the house, unless there's a really obvious sign, I need to be totally available to my kids should they want to walk up and need that time. And so what we worked out was, like, if I'm in my home office and the door is closed, I'm not available. But I try to minimize, like if I do that, I'm like on a Skype call. Like that's minimal. Or I go into the co-working space, and I do it because it creates sort of a clean boundary. And it's easier for me to leave the work then and come home and then actually pay attention to my wife and pay attention to the family and contribute there in a way that builds the right lasting relationships. Because I did not want my kids to ever worry that they were interrupting me in the middle of something and that I couldn't give them their full attention right then and there.
Yeah, that's an important point. Like we both work out of our house. Our house was built in such that our office is a purpose-built office. It's not a faux office. It's not some bedroom. It's insulated. It is set up to be a legitimate office. When the doors are shut, the house better be on fire. And I would know because we have cameras. Like, they are not allowed to break those doors down. If it's open, they're allowed to come in, but we have a routine. Daddy gets dressed, he does his thing, he goes to work. They just only know of work as it goes downstairs. But at the same token, I can't bring that back upstairs.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a separate computer that I use for personal time so that they know that it's not work. Because you know what? Turns out you like to go on the internet and find how to, get a recipe or buy some stuff on this place called Amazon, which is really great. But that context switch is a big deal for them so that they know whether or not daddy's working or daddy's not working.
I'm curious, so we kind of dived into most customers are understanding. Have you ever had to fire a customer? And
Absolutely.
What was that like?
That's the best damn thing ever.
Oh, it's great. I've done it too. But I just was curious if anybody else had to.
Absolutely. Right? Some customers we used to work together as PAS customers. We had PAS customers, and some were just no good for the business. Their expectation was that you, in this case, that you just owed them everything. And once we got rid of them, it was like a burden came off of everybody who was working for it, and we didn't have to deal with their shit the entire time anymore. And you just have to realize the margin is more than just the dollar bill, but it's also the health of the company and the well-being there, and how fast you can pump back out features or products or support or whatever to other customers. And we inevitably started to excel in other ways. So if they suck, fire them.
One last question from the audience, and I think we'll do our closing comments. It's getting almost time to go change for water park. Anyone have a last question?
Work-life balance. So you talked about the division, but when I saw your kids come on stage and watching them watch you, they mimic what you do. There's a presentation about healthy screen time and not getting involved in tech too much. Go play outside. There's trees. I'm finding that as in the tech field and stuff, as entrepreneurs, do you guys take great caution to have them be you guys be good role models, like you said, the doors and shut, but good role models so that they have the option to not go, wow, my dad gets on stage and does a speeches, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, I'm gonna be a businessman. Do you afford them the flexibility to go and wander, or is it the mimicry of you guys are in your business so much? Do you feel that you pressure them to follow in the footsteps a little bit?
I genuinely, and maybe I'm just horrible at it. I don't push anything down on my kids like that. They need to make the choice of what they want to be. No bullshit. My kids have never gone to a session here. I made a family conference so that I could create exposure to my kids to do this stuff. I can't get them to go. Kind of sucks. But on the flip side, I'm not going to push it on them. They deal with it 365 days out of the year. By the time we get here, they're done with it too. This thing sucks up mommy and daddy. They don't get to see me here. They get to experience this little Vegas, play on some water park slides, whatnot. They get it for 3 days and they're like, I want to jet set back to home. I don't want to keep hearing these slot machines. So we don't push it on them. We try to create some transparency into what we do. We try to teach. When they ask questions, we try to be honest about what it is. We also try to educate them that we live a weird life relative to other folks. But I'm sure we do a lot of other stuff super, super wrong. Now, let's see. They're 12 and 10, almost 13 and 11. They're now starting to show interest in money and things like that. We do afford them opportunities to do work with us. I know, Scott, you've got your kids work for you as well. Like those PVC signs and stuff, my kids were out there sanding that stuff down for days. Like they work on this event. They fold shirts and sort stuff and come here and pack bags. It is an expectation. If they want to put the blue shirt on and wear the logo, they got to put their damn time in too. No different than anybody else on my crew. Like they don't get a free ride because they're daddy's kid. Like that shit doesn't work for me. You have to work hard too if you want to earn it and wear it. So to some degree, I do try to push down our ethics as to how we will operate. But if you don't want to be a programmer, that's cool. Like maybe you'll find your thing later.
My daughter was here and she ran the robot night last night, the robotics team, and she also is giving a conference session tomorrow on Scrum. She's 16 and she's teaching Scrum. I don't like to think about a pushing as much as just establishing the norm. I grew up on a dairy farm. My father worked, right? My father worked. If he wasn't working, he was asleep. And sometimes that was when he'd sit down for dinner and he'd be asleep before everybody else was done eating type thing, and because you just worked all the time. And my wife thinks that's why I worked all the time, and even when I had just a 40-hour-a-week job, I still was doing 2 or 3 other job things because that was the norm. I don't try to push my kid, but I establish that norm, and that's why my daughter's been speaking at this conference since she was in the 7th grade. My son, who's 15, got his first job this summer because you have to be 15 in a lot of places to get a job. Takes a bus into Minneapolis on his own, 15. Scared the shit out of my wife and I. I went with him for the first 2 weeks and we made sure it was okay and we kind of got it all figured out. Loves it. He loves it. He loves the fact that he's got a job and he's taking a city bus to work. But for us and for our family, it's not so much about pushing them, you should speak, you should have a job. It's about establishing that norm. And when the kids start to show interest, you do whatever it takes to help them to foster that.
My kids are here, by the way. They're learning a lot of great language from those of us who are sharing here. They're 8 and 6. Hi, kids. They've been waving every time I have the microphone, waiting for mom to get off that stage.
I apologize.
You're forgiven. It's okay. We talk a lot about you could instead of you should, right? So just flipping the language a little bit, like you could be a presenter, right? We saw a little kid teaching a Roblox course yesterday, and I looked at my son and I said, you could do that. He's like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I said, well, you don't have to, but boy, you could, right? Look at these examples. There's lots of possibilities. So I try to flip the language around from you should, like you should become a programmer or you should learn to code because everybody your age is going to need to know how to do that. I instead try to open up to you could, right? And let them see, let their imaginations go. They're vivid, they're very creative. Like I don't want to squash that. I want them to continue to see what some of those possibilities could be. And they might follow in dad's footsteps and be a developer, and they might follow in mom's, and they might go in a completely different path, just to give them lots of options.
Yeah, I agree with that idea of painting the options for the future. And I talk about that with my oldest son in particular is 10 years old, who is big into baseball and big into video games. And I have struggled with getting him to spend much time on programming, even though whenever he does it, he really enjoys it and he gets engrossed in it. But the muscle memory when he gets up in the morning is to turn on the PS4. And in the afternoon after school, it's baseball practice and it's fall ball and all that. And I talk about the thing that you're going to have to decide pretty quickly in your life is, what do you want to go big on? The same story that I give from my talk, I give with my kids all the time, because I do recognize, I said, look, you know those other kids on your team are batting better than you because they're putting in the time on nights and weekends while you're playing video games. I mean, you know that's the trade-off, right? This is not about what you were born with. This is about the time that you're putting in. And there's no right answer here, but I want to paint a picture for you. Like I talk about them, I say, look, here in a few years, you're going to have a decision to make. Do you want to go wait tables, or do you want to work with Dad? And if you want to work with Dad, we can start talking right now, and I will put in time with you to do this. No pressure, but I'm offering you a situation where you can work less hours and make the same amount of money, and you may really like that in high school. And you could be years ahead of these other kids. I mean, all of us up here are in a situation where we could, if our kids want to go into software, that's a heck of an advantage. And I don't feel like software is going away anytime soon. So that's pretty cool to offer the option.
I was going to say options. When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of options, and my kids can do whatever they want to do. And I think I went to a course a long time ago, like 2008, and it was JP Boodhoo. So if you don't know JP Boodhoo, he's awesome. He's all about passion, and it's find your passion, and then that's what you should do. My high school counselor was like, find something you like and you'll never work a day in your life, right? Kind of following that whole thing. My kids may or may not like programming. They're actually right over here looking at their iPads. So they may not like programming, but that's totally okay. So whatever it is that they want to do, I want to be able to have given them the option that they can actually go do that, because I didn't necessarily have that growing up. I had to fight for everything that I got to.
So you were talking about setting an example or having expectation, and I want to go a little different direction with that. One of the things I work really hard to do, because it's not my natural tendency, is to set an example of being, sort of not in communication or not electronic. Like we have a no phone at the tables rule, and that actually got me a little bit in trouble because we got a Sonos, and then I want to change music, and I've come to the dinner tables, and I had to get a special exemption for just long enough to pick the music and hit play.
That's why you need Alexa.
Yeah, see, I know, but I'd totally fix that way. That would, yeah. But it's one of the things like if the rule's good for them that they have limits on screen time, or we push them for that applies to us as well. And the outgrowth of that is a conversation I had with my kids where I was like, look, the world's gonna make it really easy for you to be just a consumer. The world calls you and creates all these structures to drive you to be a consumer. And it's okay to consume. Consume's fun. As long as, though, a part of your life is about creation. And so, it doesn't have to be software. Software's a big part of creation for me. The other big thing I'm involved in is a praise band at my church, and I pour the same amount of energy into that I do into my work. And my wife would never let me give that up because she sees it makes me happy. So, 2 of my kids are into music, one's super into gymnastics, and I'm cool with them because, whatever you're doing some of this creation. So I don't have any problem with you playing the video games as long as there's a part of your life that goes into creation in some way. Draw on the whiteboard, write a story, program, dance, something that creates something that wasn't there before that's unique from you, and I'm good. And I think creating spaces where you are not just a passive consumer creates the hole for them to fill that with their creation. I mean, my kids are always like, nope, sorry, out of screen time, no more of that tonight. Aw. But 5 minutes later, they're off doing something crazy, which is great. And they never quite click to see the connection between that. But so for me, that's probably one of the biggest things. So that's why I'm really careful about how I use the computers, upstairs, right, in the rest of the house. But do I do it at the table or not? Or I want to make sure I'm always approachable, but I want them to see me create. I want to see that that's the things people were made for, right? We're not just made to consume, we're made to create. So create spaces and opportunities in your life to do that creation.
Yeah, and I would just end with just be transparent. I mean, I think my parents and my wife's parents, I don't think they're still, I think didn't share some of their struggles, and I don't know that was fair to, I don't know, my generation, I guess. They hid some of the stuff that was hard, and I don't know. I just be I've learned a lot from our kids in business, which sounds really backwards. You'll notice the Geekling boards started 3 or 4 years ago. It was then when I started listening better to my kids' experience here, where they have started giving us feature requests. I mean, my son or my daughter, one of them, was upset that they were not able to sign a board, and it was like a giant light bulb went off on well, of course you should be signing your own board. You're absolutely part of this. And the next year we had a sign board for him, and so including him in such a simple thing in the day-to-day and being transparent enough to where they offered up that piece of it. Now, granted, that's not in every scenario, but it was a big deal.
So I'm of 2 minds on this one. I have a almost 16-year-old at home and a 3.5 and a almost 2-year-old also at home. So for the older one, absolutely create. You stole my thunder there, but I don't care what you're doing, whether it's Minecraft or GarageBand or Photoshop or arts and crafts or welding. He started doing welding this summer, freaking awesome. He makes jewelry. Our youngest is named Wolf, so we tell him no silver jewelry. But I don't care what you create something, whether it's on the screen, whether it's in real life, whatever. He started making armor and masks out of cardboard and duct tape, and scares the crap out of his little brothers, sometimes literally. That's fantastic. Maybe not at that time, but that's the kind of thing of just the creativity, I think, is key. Don't just be a consumer. For the little ones, I'm of a totally different mindset. They're not able to create much yet, obviously. I think they'll get there, but the 16-year-old, I pretty much know what college or whatever the next step is going to look like for him. There's a pretty well-established pattern that'll happen in the next 2 to 3 years. 15 years from now, I have no clue what the next steps are going to look like for them. I mean, our field as a whole is getting more remote friendly. Wi-Fi connectivity, travel, remote, all these things are just radically changing our world. And that's our world. When we look at the wider world of education, outside of law, medicine, and engineering, which will absolutely still require a college education, there's a bunch of things that might not. There's a bunch of things that it might be a detriment in some areas, and I have no freaking clue what that's going to look like. So my mindset right now is to expose them to a variety of things, a variety of cultures, languages, histories, topic, whatever, and see what sticks. And if something's interesting, double down. 2 things are non-negotiable for me. They all need to know how to swim. If they fall off something, they need to, and then they all need to take a tumbling class, because they're not supposed to be on the roof, but I know at some point it's going to happen. So if you can fall without breaking your neck, fantastic. Beyond that, learn and do and screw around and make mistakes when the stakes are low and figure out what happens and double down on the things that are good.
All right, so
I want to wrap this up by asking each of the panelists to answer the question they were hoping one of you or I would have asked. And so if there's something specific that you were hoping to talk about, or that little nugget that you always give, I'd ask you to do that. And since I typically go last, I'll start off. These are two pieces of advice that I gave last year that I want to reiterate because I think they're important. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur, if I'm just getting started, I'm not quite sure how to launch. Someone asked last year, how do I know when it's ready, time for me to quit my job? And my answer to them was, when the extra 40 hours that you're not in your regular job isn't enough to do what you want to do. The assumption that you need to quit your job so that you have enough time to start your business is false. You have 80 hours in your week, 40 at your real job, 40 at your startup. If you're not putting that 40 in, then you're not ready to be an entrepreneur anyway, because it's going to take you 80 hours when you do it full time. And so there isn't any business in the world that you shouldn't be able to get started 40 hours a week. And you've got that other 40 after your regular job. So that's my one piece, is that you got to show that you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And when you're just getting started, it's going to take everything you have. There isn't going to be the balance. Another piece of advice I want to give the brand new entrepreneurs is, do not ever spend your money to get your prototype. I would say don't even spend your money to get your version 1. If you're lucky enough, you'll get to rewrite your app or your product several times. You're gonna throw away whatever you come out the door with. Why would you spend the very little bit of money you have to build the thing that's gonna be the first thing you throw away? Find somebody to do it with you, find a business partner, do it on your own. I see way too many starting, emerging entrepreneurs who said, yep, I saved up 40 grand, I'm gonna use that money to get my first MVP. No, don't. That's the wrong place to put your money. Find a better way to get that MVP, because you know you're going to throw it away. If you don't know that, I'm telling you, you're going to throw it away, and you're going to figure out, we should have built it this way, or we should have built it like that. So save that capital early, because you're going to need it. My final piece of advice goes back to one of the very early things I said, is what is your story? Your story is what's going to matter. When somebody asks you what you do, don't describe how your product works. Tell a story that gets people to understand why your product's important. Don't list off the features. Build a story, and build a story that people want to tell for you. It'll make all the difference.
I guess I would just say that whether you're working with partners or co-founders or on your own, sometimes being in this space can be a bit isolating, and just know that people want to see you succeed, and you don't have to go it alone. So find your community, find other people who have been down that road before you, even if they're just 6 months ahead of you or 6 years ahead of you. There are great mentors out there. There are people who want to see you be wildly successful, and don't be afraid to ask for help and lean on other people, because you'll get great tips, great advice, and great support. Sometimes where you least expect it. You might not get it where you thought you would see it, but you'll also get a ton of support in other areas. So don't let yourself be isolated if you don't need to, and look out to that community for some support.
If you're only doing it for the money, it's probably not going to be worth it, almost certainly. Create the thing that you wish existed in the world, and you'll have a natural wind at your back. It will give you the will to stay up later than you thought you'd stay up, and to work the weekends when you really would like to be outdoors. It'll get you through the pain, because the pain of that thing not existing is greater than the pain that you're feeling today. And that's how I've done anything that I've done so far, is the thought of me not being able to ship this thing once I got started, the thought of that work just going to waste and giving us zero value, pushed me forward from there. Often the hardest part is getting started and choosing that first idea, but when you found that thing, you know it, because you can't help but see this thing occur. I've got to imagine that this is what happens for Clark every year. It's, oh man, another full year of me creating another that conference, but the pain is worth it, because you can't imagine that thing not happening.
Yeah, following on that, what Corey said, I think with that comes that persistence, right? So have that persistence, that passion that's going to give you that staying power year after year as you continue to make something better. The other side, another thing I would probably say, and this comes from my military background, is if you can do two things at once, maybe, and for me, this is sometimes when I exercise, I can be reading email while I'm on a treadmill. People think I'm weird because I like the treadmill. I like treadmill because it's stationary, right? So I can still like read email and I can be getting my exercise in at the same time, right? Anywhere that you can do that is actually kind of a benefit because that gives you more time to do other things that you can put full focus on.
So probably my big thing is there are a unknowable number of little things that you'll need to deal with to create a business if you've not done it before. But there are an equal number of little ways to get that done that don't require you to personally do a lot of that work. And one of the most important things to learn how to do is to leverage others, be the community, but it also is little things like there's a service, if there's a service you can outsource a problem to, and they charge you $50 or $100 a month, do that. Because then that problem is not using up your cognitive resources, and it's just dealt with. And a lot of pricing for a lot of services is geared towards, once you get up in size. So at your small volume, they could make cost maybe basically free. But there are also even like services for business assistance by the hour that can be shockingly good for, a small investment, et cetera. There's a lot of ways to get a lot of resources for a small amount of cash that lets you offload problems that you're going to have to solve along the way. You're going to need a good lawyer. You're going to need a good accountant. You need these two things, it is just a thing. And so get an online accounting system that you can do your accounting in and charge your customers in, because it turns out actually the simple act of just being able to collect money is a thing that takes work, and it's sort of essential for a business. So know though that there's 1,000 little services. So your first thought was like, oh my gosh, we have to solve X problem. Should be great. Who can I hand that problem to that I can pay for that will take the problem off my head so that I don't have to think about that again, or at least not a lot. And hopefully it's somebody that really is passionate about that problem, so they'll do a good job at executing on it.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that's been said, and just kind of add, at the end of the day, the business, the LLC, the C Corp, the whatever it is all just some legal entity. The work that you do is the thing that's what really matters. I think we often hear people get too caught up in raising money and this and that and the mechanics of all this rather than making a thing that's profitable. A business has to make profit to withstand its own weight. It's actually some of the problems that we've had with that conference. And so, you got to love what it is that you're building. You'll reflect in the thing that you do. And there's a whole lot of other stuff, to your point, that has to also be done that has nothing to do with the making of said widget or whatever. And so, we spend equal amounts of time, just in this case, marketing and sales and orders and whatever. The job of this is to create experiences and exposure and all that. But all that other stuff is equally important too, and you can't just say, hey, I just want to bang code 10 hours a day. Turns out that ain't gonna matter, because you gotta have a billing system and credit card payments and accountants, and you gotta give it its attention that it deserves.
I have both microphones, and I am now the king, so fear me. I want to riff off what our last two gentlemen have said. I want to tell you to get over it. Gentlemen, I was being polite. I want to tell you to get over it. Software developers, we don't like marketing. Get over it. We don't like sales. Get over it. We don't like calling customers asking for money. Get over it. If we are not our own champions, nobody else will be. There is literally nobody else in our corner at times than us. Even our spouses will vocally disagree with us at times. If we are not in our own corner, nobody else will be. Get over it. Get stuff done and do it. Ship. Ask for money. Ask for pay. Go out there and market. Go out there and sell. Cold call customers. Cold email if you have to. Just get over it and get it done.